Hello everyone, it's Gladius. So Blizzard just put out a patch for Diablo IV. It's actually the biggest patch we've received so far, and a lot of it is going to restructure the way that we farm experience, especially post level 50. In the video today, I'm going to go over exactly how you can use these buffs to your advantage and be able to level twice as fast as you were able to before the buffs came out. There's a lot to go over, so let's jump right into it. So let's start with my favorite quality of life feature that they've added in this patch. You can now teleport directly to the Nightmare Dungeons. And if we look at the actual patch notes, we got two significant upgrades to Nightmare Dungeons in particular. Nightmare Dungeons are now going to give you more experience rewarded at the end when you complete the dungeon, and then also the monsters inside of the dungeon are going to give you more experience per kill as well. Now, Blizzard didn't release any numbers that told us exactly how much it was buffed by. Some players were testing it and they said it was about 80%. I did some tests on my own and I'll show you what I found. And this buff was significant. In the background, you can see I'm doing a Nightmare Dungeon here, and right here you can see this is the experience bar after I finished the dungeon. And this dungeon was somewhere around 8 minutes. And I'm at level 66, so this is where experience is starting to slow down, but really this is way faster than it was before the patch. Now let's compare that to the strongest leveling method before the patch, which was Helltides. Here is an example of what the same amount of time looks like in a Helltide. Now my Nightmare Dungeon example is at level 66 and the Helltide is at level 62, so it's not a perfect comparison, but if anything, the Helltide should be awarding more experience relative to the level because higher levels require more experience. So Nightmare Dungeons are great, they're rewarding a lot more experience, but how can we flesh this out into a strategy where we can actually take full advantage of this? Well, first, what we want to do is we want to take a look at our consumables. You probably know this, but you can equip two of them. You can equip an incense and also a consumable elixir. Of course, the elixir has a 5% experience bonus applied to it, so at least what you want to be going in with the elixir applied. Incense helps you clear a little bit faster or keeps you alive a little bit longer, but definitely keep the elixir. Here's a really big one. We will always want to be fighting monsters that are about 3 levels ahead of us. You can do 2 levels if you're on hardcore like I am, but 3 levels is the most optimal. So why do we want to do that? Monsters are going to give an experience bonus based on how many levels higher they are than you, up to a bonus of 25%. And that cap is found at 3 levels higher than you. The sum of the Sigil tier and 54 will give you the monster level that will be inside the Nightmare Dungeon. So for example, if you have a level 10 Sigil, it's going to have monsters who are level 64 inside of it. So if we go with the conservative estimation of what the buffs are to the experience awarded in Nightmare Dungeons, and let's say it's about 80%, so far we've discussed about how we can raise that by an additional 30%. Now let's go one step further. On screen and in the description, there's a really good resource on Maxroll's website. They rate the Nightmare Dungeons based on which ones are the best to farm experience points. They also organize them by glyph leveling and a couple other categories. So head on over there and take a look at that. Again, the link is in the description. I've been using this and it's super helpful. When you see these sigils pop up and when you craft these sigils for Nightmare Dungeons, these are the ones you definitely want to do because they give the most experience. There's a combination of factors here. There's the efficiency of the dungeon layout, objectives that you might run into, monster density, pack size, that kind of stuff. But if you want to stick to the main ones that have the most experience and will get you the most levels as quick as you can, stick with these. These are a good route to go. Now, just while we're on the topic, and in case anyone doesn't know, you can craft sigils as well. Sigils are going to come in several different types. First of all, this will sound familiar to you from how gear drops as well, but there's going to be sacred and ancestral level sigils. Within the sigils, there's going to be tiers that range from 1 to 20 for sacred, and then all the way from 20 to 100 for the ancestral. Now we know this from earlier in the video that to determine the monster level that's going to be inside the sigil, we just add 54 to the tier level. Now something else that comes along with the different tier levels is that we're going to start getting more and more afflictions added to each of the sigils as we scale up the difficulty. Higher we go, the more afflictions we see. So for example, if we take a quick look at a level 5 sigil, we can see that we have one positive affix at the very top that's highlighted in green, and then there's going to be negative affixes that are applied to the sigil. And as we can see over here, we can get 3 affixes or afflictions applied to a level 1 to 5 sigil. Let's compare that to level 15. Level 15 has 4 affixes applied to it, and one of them is positive. Now, just a brief overview of which affixes you might want to avoid. That's going to depend on your build to an extent, but from what I have found, the ones you don't want to do are slaying projectiles, potion breakers, and backstabbers. I haven't really found any other affixes standing out as being really threatening, but if you get multiple of those on a sigil, I would consider re-rolling it or crafting into a new one. There's too many afflictions to go through in the video here, but I do have a link in the description where you can take a look at the full list of all afflictions. This is on Maxroll's website. Again, another great resource to take a look at when you're deciding which ones of the afflictions you want to run and which ones you want to avoid. Again, a lot of this is going to be build specific, if you're melee or ranged, all that kind of stuff. On that topic, if you ever find a sigil that you don't want to run, and you can salvage the sigil. Salvaging is going to give you a certain amount of sigil powder. The amount of sigil powder you get back is going to depend on the level or tier of the sigil, and then you can spend this powder to craft sigils in the crafting section. Overall, it's a pretty simple system. You're basically just going to get a random number of afflictions each time you craft one of these, and you can always salvage the ones you don't want to run. Speaking of the Occultist, if you're curious about affixes, codexes, and how that whole system works, I have a guide in the description that goes over in detail all the functions of the Occultist as it relates to enchanting gear and applying legendary affixes to your rares that you find. Now, up until this point in the video, we have just been focusing on level 50 and above content. There were also some buffs to lower level leveling, like the Tree of Whispers awarding more experience on completion. And I did also want to mention that they did buff Helltide as well. Now still, the Helltide doesn't come out to be quite as efficient as doing the Nightmare Dungeons due to the random nature of what Helltide is. And Tree of Whispers is just more of a side activity that if you can complete it while you're doing Nightmare Dungeons, then it's still worth putting in the rotation. That's not saying that you'll never do Helltide or you'll never do the Tree of Whispers, because there's still items that you need from each of these. I'm just talking strictly from looking at it from a XP or experience gain perspective. But check the description below for guides on both of these. Maybe you can make use of this when you first hit a new world tier. For example, when you go from world tier to World Tier 2 to World Tier 3, maybe you can start with the Helltide events and also the Tree of Whispers before heading into Nightmare Dungeons immediately. All right, everyone, that's going to end the video there. Let me know in the comment section below if you have a strategy that you're going to use instead, or if you're going to adopt this strategy going forward after the recent buffs. If the video did help you out today, please heroic strike that like button. And if you want to stay tuned for more Diablo 4 content in the future, please bash the subscribe. I appreciate your time today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.